Talking up Texas A&M football, wonder what that could mean these days. Got Andrew Heddersley on the line from 247 Sports. Catch him on Gig'em 247. Andrew joins us on a regular basis. We always enjoy the conversation. Andrew, things were supposed to be quiet. Things are typically quiet this time of year before the big recruiting storm coming in June, but
not much going on, right? No, has Texas A&M even been in the news lately? No.
I was digging for something, trying to find something. Yeah. I don't know.
Funny enough, it's the second. I was talking with my coworker. It's the second straight year that Alabama and Texas A&M have kind of been in the news, because last year around this time was when Jimbo Fisher made the comment about how they were going to beat Alabama while Nick Saban was there, and that started that whole thing. And so they kind of like maybe getting in the news in May. This time around, it was Nick Saban who kind of started all the fun.
Folks, if you don't know what happened, we're not going to go through the whole thing. Basically, Nick Saban had comments to a Alabama business group in Birmingham on Wednesday night. That got reported. That leaked out. The video's out there. And then Jimbo had his response on Thursday morning. So again, I'm guessing 99% of you know exactly what was said. The other 1% of you, go look it up. So let's get into it. You brought up some interesting points before we started to record that I hadn't necessarily thought of. Number one, Jimbo Fisher's not on Twitter, not on social media.
He doesn't. Yeah, he's not a big fan of social media and Twitter, so he's not on there. And so really the thing to think about with him is when he gives a message, one, I think he felt like he needed to respond to what was said. And, it was directly calling out Texas A&M and the program and the way they did things. And so I think he definitely felt the need to respond and came out obviously very, very vigorously in defending them. And when he is speaking to people, he's speaking to basically just only a couple people. He's speaking to his current players in the administration, future players, targets, players that they're in on in this class, and the fans. And that's all he really cares about, and really only cares about what's best for Texas A&M. And so that was where his response was kind of directed at. And the response coming out of it was extremely positive from commits and current players and everybody just looking ahead to that October 8th matchup, which is going to be really spicy in Tuscaloosa. And, those were the people that he was really speaking to. And for the most part, the responses were pretty positive, and he's not going to see really the negative feedback on Twitter and all that stuff. He couldn't care less about Twitter and has very much made his feelings felt on that. So that's kind of where he stands on it. And honestly, he got a call. I'm sure he got a number of calls on Wednesday night when the comments kind of came out from Nick Saban. But, it wasn't like he was scrolling through Twitter and saw it. He got several phone calls about what Nick Saban had said.
Got Andrew Heddersley from Gig'em 247 breaking down Texas A&M football for us. So Andrew has put together a gallery of comments and tweets that were sent out by a lot of the recruits that obviously there's a huge overlap when Alabama and Texas A&M look at their recruiting targets because they're recruiting the best players in the country. Yeah. So a huge overlap there. So I'm fascinated by this, and everybody needs to head on over to Gig'em 247 Sports to check out what Andrew's put together with the responses from these players. So that, because those are the people that really, fans can say what they want. And of course the fans pay the bills ultimately. So it matters what the fans have to say, but the media, we've got our own take on all this, but it is intriguing. What do the recruits that are talking to these coaching staffs and these particular coaches, how did they respond?
Yeah. Right. And a lot of the responses came from kids that are in the 2022 class. And those are the people that more than anything, one, were who Jimbo Fisher was upset about, because he obviously made the comments about these being 17-year-old kids. And that was kind of who the comments were directed at. And so a lot of those kids were the ones that got on Twitter. But then you also had guys like Damani Richardson and Antonio Johnson saying, let's look ahead to October 8th and lining up for that game. And let's go play Alabama again. And so, it was kind of fascinating to see all the responses. They came in pretty quickly. And a lot of them were just kind of appreciative of Jimbo Fisher having their back, and that's probably what's going to come out of this is, he's going to build up a lot of trust with recruits and current players that appreciate him having their back.
Also, it's good to note that you cited a few sources when we were having our conversation before we started to record that backed up Jimbo's claims, kind of matched up in regards to the coaching staff, Jimbo being out of the collective between the player, the school, and all of that.
Yeah, and shortly after, I think it was Bruce Feldman who had a comment from one of the NIL attorneys who said, what Jimbo said is absolutely correct, and having dealt with the collectives and all that stuff, and I don't know the full collectives and what goes on there, but the one thing I was told is that it's 100% accurate what he's saying about that the coaching staff is removed from it, and the collectives that go on in general, it's following state law, and that's the way that the law was set up, and from what happens from there, is up to, they're not the only collective. We've heard a lot about collectives over the past couple of months, and what happens there is honestly up to them.
And so based on your understanding, and I've had this conversation with a number of people trying to clarify, and I know everybody's kind of out there wondering because a lot of this stuff is difficult to grasp, but the players can obviously do their own research, and they know by word of mouth, they know about what's out there, that the big programs are going to have NIL money available, and those opportunities are going to be available whether you go to Texas A&M or Alabama or Ohio State, or there are going to be opportunities if you're a top flight player. But the schools / coaches cannot directly contact the player in the recruiting process and say, we've got this NIL deal for you at this amount of money.
Correct. They can't be involved at all in setting up NIL deals or anything like that, and can't really have any involvement on it. And so really what they can do is they can educate about NIL and building your brand and setting up, setting up your own stuff, but they can't have anything to do with organizing NIL deals for you. Now, players can, if they're curious on doing their own research, can hire marketing agents and NIL lawyers, and a lot of kids have actually done that, who can handle all that for them. And the coaches cannot have any involvement with setting up deals or even negotiating anything for them. They just can't have anything to do with that, and that's what the law says. And so anything that they go out and get on their own is fine. It's as long as it's reported to the school, it goes through compliance. And that's that. Now, I think the one thing you have heard from a lot of coaches around the country is that they just want uniform rules. Every rule is different in every state, and every state's got something different because it was just kind of put on the plate last summer and said kind of, go state by state. And so as a result, everybody's got different rules, and everybody's kind of going by different things. But the one kind of constant is that coaches can't have any involvement in it. Now I know, I think the collectives, what's going to happen there is probably going to be something to watch. And I know the NCAA released their guidance a couple weeks ago about the collectives and all that stuff. But when it comes to current players and recruits and all that sort of stuff, they have all the power in the world to call other kids and see what's going on. And I know a lot of kids do that, is kind of call around and see what other kids are getting and how they're doing things and all that. And so really it's whatever you make for yourself. And I think that's the thing is, I don't think either Saban or Jimbo they were both saying the same kind of thing. Obviously, that they want uniformity. And that was the thing that came out of both messages. I know everybody kind of focused on the personal attacks and all that sort of stuff and the allegations, but they both kind of said that they want uniformity and they feel like there needs to be more guidance. And so, it's going to be interesting to see what happens over the next couple of months and how this kind of all unfolds. Cause it's going to be a topic that continues to kind of stick around until there's more guidance.
If you get at what Nick Saban was saying, what was buried in the lead was, we need to address this. The NCAA is kind of hamstrung. There's litigation that they're afraid of, so they can't do things. We need to get a handle on this. We need uniformity. It's not a sustainable model. He was making all those comments that I think most people can get on board with.
Yeah.
But that got buried because people are going to focus on the attack. So he had a lot of good things to say there, but people aren't going to focus on that, including myself and everything, because it's obviously the shock value of the attack is what grabbed everybody's attention. So
Yeah.
I think he misstepped there. He had an opportunity to talk about what's important, and he did, but nobody focused on that.
Yeah. Once he started singling out schools, and I don't necessarily buy his deal yesterday afternoon where he said he didn't mean to single out Texas A&M. Well, he kind of did. He kind of very directly did, and Jackson State and Miami and a bunch of other programs. And so, I think if he had kept it on the NIL focus as a whole, it would have blended into what everybody else was kind of saying, and he could have got his message across. But once he started singling out certain schools and certain programs, I think that's where this kind of ratcheted up a little bit.
Yeah, and if the way he stated it, he didn't flat out say Texas A&M's cheating, but
Yeah.
it can be construed to mean they're cheating because they bought every player in the 22 class.
Exactly.
Well,
that's kind of, that can be interpreted a lot of ways. And so I think that's the way everybody kind of took it, is the way he said it interpreted, kind of implied that they were cheating. Now, whether he meant
exactly.
for that to be what he was saying, I don't know. But the way it came across was very much, we came second. The school above us bought every player in their class. And I think that's why A&M fans were so upset.
And we didn't buy any.
Yeah, and we didn't buy any. And I think that's why, A&M fans were so upset, why Jimbo Fisher was really upset. And I can understand his frustration. Now, did he maybe go over the line with the personal attacks? Maybe, but he was also defending his program and needed to come out and vigorously defend his program.
Because I think there's two ways you can attack this. One would be, yes, to just flat out say, if you truly believe it, X, Y, and Z's out there cheating. But if you are just trying to make the point that they have more money than us, they're not doing anything wrong. I'm just saying this is a bad model and it's not sustainable because certain programs have more money and more resources. Then you don't need to single anyone out, because if they're doing things the right way, they just happen to have more resources. That's just too bad. And nobody should feel sorry for Nick Saban for not having enough resources because, he's got 99% more than everybody else. So he shouldn't be the one calling, let Georgia Southern or Appalachian State call somebody out to say, this is unfair.
Exactly. And I think it's one of those things where you got to be careful about how you address it. NIL is a very touchy subject right now. Everybody feels, there's a lot of people who feel very, very strongly about one side or the other. And I think the one thing is the SEC meetings are coming up in probably 2 to 3 weeks, I think, at the end of this month. That feels like the time that if you had a problem or wanted to address something, that feels behind closed doors, where it would have been the better time to address this. And I'm sure he is. He said he was going to address this more at the spring meetings. That felt like more of the time to really address this. And, out in a public forum, I know, whether it was a public event or private event or whether they were phones, when you're Nick Saban, somebody's going to have an iPhone. And in today's day and age, it's very easy to, take a video of something happening and blast it out. And so, I think if he was trying to get at fixing the game and making changes, there was probably a better forum to do it. And the SEC meetings probably would have been a better place to sit there and outline your points and be able to have a discussion.
Absolutely. Andrew Hattersley's here talking up Texas A&M football at the Voice of College Football. And, because exactly, what was that entertaining? For me to get intrigued in that kind of stuff rarely happens. I'm not that kind of guy that's digging up stuff like that. But it was entertaining. But getting past the entertainment for a little bit, that's not what we want to see in college football. We don't want to see two of the top coaches in college football at each other's throats. We don't want that. We don't want accusations flying back and forth. We don't want that. So hopefully
kind
it
of
gets
forced,
cleaned up.
yeah, kind of forced Greg Sankey's hand too to have to come out with a statement and reprimand both coaches. And I don't know what a reprimand kind of entails, or whether it's just kind of more of a symbolic deal, but
Yeah.
it kind of forced his hand to come out and say, guys, get back in your corners, and let's let this go.
And not to dig up the past, but Lane Kiffin's comments on National Signing Day, I thought were whiny and inappropriate as well. Again,
Yeah.
Saban's comments, in a sense, even if they were inaccurate, were at least forthright in terms of the accusations of cheating. Lane Kiffin's was just kind of whining about we don't have as much money as they do.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing is, everybody just kind of wants to look at yesterday and, thinks that Jimbo Fisher kind of just went off. It feels like this has kind of been bubbling for a little while, because there's just been kind of a veil comment here, a veil comment there, and, a little subtle jab here, a subtle jab there. And so at a certain point, you have to come out and defend yourself. And I know, again, people are going to look at Jimbo Fisher's comments and have their opinion. I frankly don't think he really cares. Again, he was speaking to the fans, and the fans are the people that really appreciated what he said yesterday. And there were not many negative comments from the A&M side coming out of yesterday, just because they understood where he was coming from. They understood he felt the need to say something. And I don't think either side was going to change. What Jimbo Fisher said yesterday wasn't going to change anybody's opinion, regardless of what he said. Alabama fans are going to stick by Nick Saban, and A&M fans are going to stick by Jimbo Fisher, and that's kind of where it is. And the folks in the middle just could just kind of grab their popcorn and watch the spectacle and what happened because you're not going to see that very often, of two coaches coming out there and kind of having a battle out in the media like that.
If anybody out there can think of a time when coaches have gone after each other with that kind of language, like despicable, godlike, czar-like, and what's say, if anybody can think of a time, because I can't, leave it down in the comments section, please. All right. Andrew Hattersley, Gig'em 247 Sports, join him right there again. Especially this gallery of the tweets from the players should be an interesting read. So check that out.